Welcome back to the Southwest Health and Human Services Family Child Care Orientation. Your licensing staff are, for Lincoln, Lyon, and Murray counties, Lori Timaeus and Jackie Johnson. For Pipestone County, Judy Vandenbosch. For Redwood County, Melanie Getter. For Rock County, Jessica Schmidt. And assisting with licensing in Redwood County and as unit supervisor, Gail Beelan. Your licensor will answer your questions along the way, complete your initial licensing visit, be your main resource for questions, and complete relicensing and off-year home visits. She will also process your application paperwork when it comes in, review background study information, send your reference letters, and if needed, request a fire marshal inspection of your home. Other responsibilities of the licensor include processing background study disqualifications, investigating complaints, and recommending negative actions. Your packet includes this document, which can be used to keep track of the children in your care. This will help you stay within license guidelines. Your own children and any visiting children under the age of 11 years count in your numbers when they are on the premise. This is true even if the visiting children's parent is present. Most people will start out with the Class A license. This license allows for 10 children, 6 of whom can be under school age. Of those 6, 3 can be under 24 months of age, and of those 3, 2 can be under 12 months of age. If you have been licensed for at least a year sometime in the past or have specific educational or child care work experience, you may be able to start with a Class C group family license. Please speak to your licensor if you have questions about whether or not you may qualify for an initial Class C group family license. The rule requires certain activities in licensed family child care. Those requirements are as follows. You must offer indoor and outdoor play, weather permitting. This chart should be used when considering appropriate weather for outdoor play. Daily outdoor play is required throughout the year unless it may be unsafe due to extremes in temperature or humidity. You must offer play that is developmentally and age appropriate. You must offer active and quiet activities. And you must offer play that is provider directed and child initiated. Whether the play is directed by you or not, there is an expectation that you will be supervising at all times. The rule and statute are very specific about behavior guidance. Corporal punishment is not permitted in licensed family child care. While it may not be illegal for the general public to spank their children, it is illegal for licensed child care providers to spank any child, even their own child, during daycare hours. All forms of physical punishment are prohibited. Emotional abuse is also prohibited. Examples include shaming, ostracizing, or name-calling. Perhaps the child's behavior is a challenge for you, but this does not allow you to call the child a brat or to tell their parent at pickup time that their child is a brat. If you need to discuss discipline with the parents, do so out of earshot of the child and use respectful language. Another type of emotional abuse is making derogatory comments about the child's family. Perhaps a family is divorcing and you feel that one parent is in the right and the other is in the wrong. Please remember that the child loves both parents and has no power over the parents' marital relationship. Making negative comments or statements about either parent is not permitted within earshot of the child. Also, data privacy does not allow you to discuss the child or family with another child or family in care. As the provider, discipline is your job. No child in care is allowed to punish another child, even if it is their younger sibling. Timeout must be appropriate to the child's age and the action requiring discipline. Infants shall not be placed in timeout. Timeout is limited to 10 minutes at a time. The timeout area must be safe, well lit, climate controlled, and visible to you, the caregiver. A timeout area cannot be locked, and children may not be disciplined for toileting accidents. In licensed family child care, you may only use cribs that were manufactured after the date of June 28, 2011. You may also use pack and play type playpens so long as they have not been recalled. There are no restrictions on the allowable age of pack and play type playpens, just the stipulation that the playpen must not be recalled. Information on recalled sleep space and other child care equipment can be found at the Consumer Product Safety website at www.cpsc.gov. This website is included on the crib inspection forms that you will be completing on all crib and playpens in your home. Please note that in this crib photo, there are no blankets, toys, bumpers, or pillows in the crib. This is an accurate example of a safe sleep space for an infant. The only thing allowed in a crib with an infant is a tight-fitting sheet, the infant, and if the infant uses one, a pacifier. This slide and the following slide explain infant sleep regulations and statutory recommendations more fully. In 2013, Minnesota Statute 245A, or the Human Services Licensing Act, was updated to eliminate any preventable infant sleep deaths in family child care. These rules are for children under age 12 months and no longer apply after an infant's first birthday. Some highlights from these regulations include: infants must be placed to sleep on their back. The parents may not give consent for their infant to be placed to sleep in a different position. The only time an infant may be placed to sleep in a different position is with a specific form filled out by the infant's doctor. You may request this form from your licensor. Infants must sleep in cribs that were manufactured after June 28, 2011, or in pack-and-play type playpens that have not been recalled. Infants cannot be allowed to nap in car seat, stroller, high chairs, swings, etc. If they fall asleep there, the infant must be moved to a crib or pack-and-play type playpen as soon as it is practical. If an infant must briefly remain in a stroller, swing, etc., you must keep the infant in your sight. There must be a tight-fitting sheet on the crib or pack-and-play mattress. The infant, sheet, and an optional pacifier must be the only items in the crib. The pacifier must not have anything attached to it, no strings, straps, stuffed animal, cloth, or toys. There is an allowance for swaddling under specific circumstances. You will need to request a parent consent for swaddling an infant form from your licensor if you have a family wanting their infant to be swaddled. A sleep sack with attached wings that Velcro over the infant's arms or torso can be worn with written parent permission. Sleep sacks with the attached wings may only be used until the infant is able to roll over independently. Sleep sacks without the attached wings may be used regardless of whether or not an infant may roll over independently. Due to the seriousness of keeping infants safe at sleep time, a provider who does not adhere to these regulations may be subject to a fine for a sleep space violation. Please follow safe infant sleep practices every time you place an infant down to sleep to keep the infant safe and to avoid a negative action recommendation against your child care license. Please speak with your licensor if you have any questions about infant sleep regulations. The importance of supervision in family child care cannot be overemphasized. Complaints to our agency related to inadequate supervision include children wandering away outside, children touching each other inappropriately, and persons under 18 supervising children in care. Children must be supervised by a person who is at least 18 years of age, has cleared a background study through Southwest Health and Human Services for child care licensure, and has received the necessary training. You must be able to physically protect children under age 5 from harm. They cannot be left alone, outside or inside, so if someone has to come inside to use the bathroom, or you have to go inside to check on a sleeping infant, everyone under age 5 has to come inside too. Please remember to closely supervise napping children and children who are playing together, especially in hidden areas. We have had reports of inappropriate sexual behavior during nap time and when children are playing in forts, closets, and tents. This is traumatic for the children, the provider, and the parents. Do your best to prevent it from happening in your child care home. Teenagers who are helping you in your daycare are not allowed to supervise anyone and need to be supervised themselves. Since school-agers may be outside without you, teenagers may also be outside with school-agers, but they are not in charge of supervision. You, as a license holder, are still responsible for all children in care. Sleeping infants may be left inside while you take the rest of the children outside, but only if you use a monitor so that they may be heard and seen if it is a visual monitor. You must bring the rest of the children back inside or bring the infant outside when the infant awakens. You may not leave an awake infant alone in the house. Statutory recommendations for infants state that sleeping infants should be checked visually at least every 15 minutes during the first 4 months of care and anytime an infant has an upper respiratory infection. For all other infants, it is recommended that in-person checks be conducted every 30 minutes of nap time. You must be available for assistance and care of children ages 5 to 11. School-age children may play outside in your yard without you physically being out there with them. With written permission, school-age may leave your property to walk or ride bike to a bus stop, school, or an activity such as swimming lessons or t-ball. As stated in this slide, supervision requires being actively engaged in the environment, not just a presence in the house. There are two types of training requirements: initial training requirements and ongoing training requirements. This fact sheet provides information about training requirements for licensed family child care providers that are set forth in current law. See Minnesota Statute Section 245A.50. Requirements related to a caregiver definitions and use of substitutes are in Minnesota Rules Part 9502.0315 and 9502.0365. This slide provides information about the difference between a license holder, an adult caregiver, a substitute provider, an emergency substitute provider, and a helper. Training requirements are unique for each of these roles. There are specific courses that providers must complete prior to licensure, including supervising for safety, child development and behavior guidance, first aid, and CPR. Providers caring for children under school age must complete training on abusive head trauma, and those caring for infants must complete training on sudden unexpected infant death. If you plan to transport children under age 9, you must also complete training on child passenger restraint safety, or CARS. The chart on this slide explains the initial training that you, other caregivers, and helpers need to complete prior to licensure. Most of these trainings can be found on the Develop website. Registering on that site and creating an ID, password, and profile are explained in upcoming slides. In addition to the initial training you will be required to complete, providers must complete a minimum of 16 hours of training per year to grow their knowledge and expand their expertise as early childhood professionals. A portion of those 16 hours will include specific training topics or courses that must be part of the ongoing professional development for providers. This slide provides information on the list of required courses, the frequency with which courses need to be completed, and which caregivers are required to complete each course. As you may have noted in the previous slides, some courses are required annually. Others must be completed every 2 years or every 5 years. This slide provides the definition of annual and specifically when to complete those courses that are to be done every 2 or 5 years. As noted, annually means a training needs to be completed sometime within the 1-year period following the effective date of your license. Annual trainings do not follow the calendar year, but instead are to be completed within the years of your child care license. So for example, if you were licensed March 1st, 2019, you must complete an annual training sometime between March 1, 2019 and February 28, 2020. You would then need to repeat that training again between March 1, 2020 and February 28, 2021. For trainings not required annually, such as first aid and CPR or CARS training, those trainings must be repeated by the relevant anniversary date of the completed training. We as licensors recognize that all of this may be confusing to child care providers. If you have any questions about the training classes you are required to complete or when they need to be repeated, please do not hesitate to contact your licensor for assistance. The next few documents walk you through how to register on developtoolmn.org. Look for the arrows, numbers, and text to guide you through the process. For instance, at the top of this page, there is an arrow pointing to the register link. See the circle with the number 1 inside and the arrow? The text below the circle and arrow corresponds with the number and provides directions of what to do. Follow the directions through the handout, and by the end, you will be able to register for training. Please note, you do not have to become a member to register for training. If you want to wait until later to become a member, just go back to developtoolmn.org and select Login using the ID number and password that are listed in your confirmation email. This screen is where you can become a member at a later date if you wish. For now, you are ready to search for and register for Training on Develop. This page summarizes the fees for applying to Southwest Health and Human Services for a family child care license. The licensing fee is $50 per year. Your initial licensure will be for 1 year. Generally, subsequent licensing will be for a 2-year period, and the licensing renewal fee for a 2-year period is $100. Additionally, the background study fee is $50 for initial licensure and for subsequent licensing renewals. Whether you have 1 or 10 individuals required to submit a background study, the cost is the same for the licensing period. We do our best to keep our agency website up to date. Please check there for a listing of licensed providers in each of our 6 counties, information on emergency preparedness required for providers, and a link to the DHS licensing lookup for all licensed programs in the state of Minnesota. We will start talking about how to fill out the application forms now. This is the application for a family child care license. Please date your application at the top, complete section 1, and if they apply, sections 2 and 2.1. Page 2 is where you will put in your identifying information. If there are going to be 2 people named on the license, then both people's information should be shared here. If your assistant will work less than 30 times per year, the assistant's information does not go on this page. At the top of page 3, everyone listed on page 2 must provide their Social Security number. If you have a Minnesota tax ID number or a federal employer number, you may enter that here as well. It is a good idea to get another tax ID number so that you aren't giving out your Social Security number to multiple families at the end of every year. In section 4, if you plan to name your child care something other than your first and last name, you may put that name in here. If your child care will be at a different address than your residence, put that address here as well. In section 5, please check all that apply. This helps the licensor know what areas to look at in the house when doing the home inspection. In section 6, please list all household members, including yourself. Here is also where you will list your assistants, if any. The rule requires us to collect 3 written reference letters before we can issue a license. Please provide complete and accurate mailing addresses for your references to eliminate any delays in processing your application. Our agency will mail a written questionnaire to your references with a self-addressed stamped return envelope. Section 8 is where you will most likely check the box next to A-Family. If you were previously licensed in Southwest Health and Human Services or another Minnesota county for at least a year, or you meet one of the requirements on page 11 of the rule, you may be able to apply for a C-class license. If you are interested in the B or D class licenses, please contact your licensor to discuss those specialized license classes. Some child care homes operate only during the school year, but most operate year-round. Whatever your plan is, please indicate your months of operation and your estimated hours. These hours may change over time, so just write your best guess for now. We will address Section 10 in a few pages. In Section 11, you will indicate whether you will accept government funding of any kind in your family child care. Most providers do participate in the USDA Child and Adult Care Food Program, so would check the second box. Also, if you intend to accept families who receive child care assistance to pay for their child care, you would check the second box. Check the first box only if you do not intend to participate in the food program or the child care assistance program. Do not sign this page yet. You will need to sign it in the presence of a notary public. Applications that have not been notarized will be returned to you, which will delay processing of your application. This workers' compensation insurance form is the form mentioned in Section 10 of the application. Please fill out the top section to the best of your ability. You will not have a license number yet, and you may not have a fax number, but the rest of the information is required. Skip the middle section, Section 1, unless you have a paid, non-related employee. In the bottom section, where it says number 2, most applicants will check the second box to indicate they have no independent contractors or employees. If one of the other three boxes applies to you, check that one. Be sure to sign and date this form. If it is incomplete, you will need to complete it before you may be licensed. Fire marshal inspection may be required. If it is required, there is a $50 additional inspection fee. Depending on the physical location of your child care site, the inspection may be completed by a local inspector or by a deputy state fire marshal. Your licensor will determine whether or not a fire marshal inspection is required based on the triggers included on this slide. She will also determine whether or not a local inspector may be used for your home inspection. If you live in a rental property and are required to have a fire marshal inspection, a landlord's permission form signed by your landlord for the fire marshal inspection will be required. Please contact your licensor for this form. This slide, along with the next, are your privacy rights as a license application and license holder. Please read through and sign the bottom of the second page. The rule requires that a physician certify that you are in sufficient health to provide family child care. Please take this form to your doctor and have him or her complete it for you. This will be required before you may be licensed. We have some questions that aren't covered in the state required forms you've seen thus far. Please have all adults living in the licensed home and anyone working in your licensed child care complete this form. If you have a spouse, you and your spouse may complete and sign this form together. The last form to submit with your application is the background study form. The background study form looks at criminal records and social services records. The information that you provide and the information that we discover is private information. We are prohibited by law from disclosing private information. You and any household members age 13 and older will need to complete this form. You will also need a background study for your emergency backup person, as well as any additional caregivers in your child care. Additionally, any regular visitors to your home during daycare hours who may have unsupervised access to children should complete and submit a background study form as well. Remember, the background study fee is paid at the beginning of a license period and covers all studies needed for the entire license period. There is no additional cost once you pay that fee at the beginning. Please list your entire first, middle, and last name. If you do not have a middle name, please write no middle name. If you have a driver's license or state ID number, you must disclose it. You must disclose your race. You must disclose your social security number. We will need to check your background for the past 5 years. So if you have lived anywhere else in the past 5 years, please disclose that under previous residence. If you can't remember the apartment building number, that's fine. Just write as much of the address as you remember and be sure to indicate the dates that you lived there. We need 5 years worth of dates. If there are not 5 years worth of dates listed, we will return the form to you for completion, which will delay your application. If you have used other first or last names, such as a nickname or your last name prior to marriage or adoption, please list those. Now we will talk about how to get your house ready for the licensing visit. Some of this checklist is self-explanatory, but the items that tend to trip people up will be explained more fully. We combined the requirements from several laws and the rule to create the safety checklist. Please feel free to write all over this document. The purpose of a flashlight and battery-powered radio is to monitor the weather if the power goes out during a storm. Check batteries frequently to ensure that your supply is adequate and the batteries are current for both the flashlight and the radio. Be sure to get a fire extinguisher that is a 2A 10 BC or larger. A small kitchen fire extinguisher is usually a 1A 10 BC extinguisher and is not big enough. Your fire extinguisher will need to be serviced annually after 1 year of ownership. Try not to buy a disposable extinguisher with a plastic head, as it won't be serviceable and you will end up buying a new one every year. Smoke detectors must be replaced with the same kind of detector that was in that location 10 years from the date on the back of the detectors. If there is a hardwired smoke detector in that location, you must replace it with a hardwired smoke detector. It would be easiest to buy the same brand if you are able. Then it will plug into the ceiling receptacle with ease. If you can't get the same brand, you may need to have an electrician rewire the detectors. If your home is required to have a fire marshal inspection, the inspector will be checking for carbon monoxide detectors within 10 feet of all bedrooms, since this is required in all homes per current Minnesota State Fire Code. This is true whether the bedrooms are used for daycare or not. Carbon monoxide detectors can be of any type, hardwired, battery-powered, or plug-in. They should be replaced every 5 years. If your home has only electric heat and you do not have an attached garage, carbon monoxide detectors are not required by fire code. The firewall is the sheetrock in the garage. All parts of the wall that join the house to the garage must be sheetrocked on the garage side up to the peak of the roof. If your connecting door to your garage does not self-close and latch, purchase 2 self-closing hinges at the hardware store. Replace the existing hinges at the top and bottom of the door to ensure the door is self-closing. If your bathroom door or bedroom doors lock, be sure that you can unlock them and that the key or unlocking device is kept outside the door and is easily accessible. It's important to ensure that stairways accessible to children 6 to 18 months are properly protected. If you purchase a gate for the top of the stairway, please be sure to obtain one that is specifically designed for the top of the stairs. Some gates designed only for the bottom of the stairs but used at the top may collapse when a young child pushes on them, causing the child to fall down the stairs. Children need to be protected from hot surfaces such as fireplace glass or hot wood stoves. Make sure that there is a barrier to prevent burns, and don't use the fireplace or stove during or immediately prior to daycare hours. If you have a patio door that opens to a deck that hasn't been built yet, that door will need to be blocked so that it can't be opened. The blocking device will need to be more permanent than a dowel in the bottom track. Builders will screw a piece of wood into the upper track before they close on the house. Perhaps there is still a hole in the track that you could reuse. You do not need to print this document. If a child in care is diagnosed with a communicable disease, it is the provider's responsibility to notify the parents of the other children in care that their children were exposed. Please keep the infected child's name confidential, much as the schools do when notifying parents that children have been exposed to communicable diseases. For disposable diapers, a covered diaper disposal container must be located in the diaper changing area and lined with a disposable plastic bag. The container must be emptied when full and at least daily. Diapering must not take place in a food preparation area. The diaper changing area must be covered with a smooth, non-absorbent surface. If the surface is not disposable and is wet or soiled, it must be washed with soap and water to remove debris and then disinfected with a solution of at least 2 teaspoons of chlorine bleach to 1 quart of water. If the surface is not soiled with feces or urine, then it must be disinfected with the solution of chlorine bleach and water after each diapering. You may also use a bleach alternative if it meets the criteria noted on this form. Please note that bleach remains the most economical product to use. Single-service disposable wipes or freshly laundered cloths must be used for washing a soiled child. A child who has soiled or wet must be washed with a disposable wipe or a freshly laundered cloth before rediapering. Cloth diapers, except those supplied by a commercial diaper service, plastic pants, and soiled clothing must be placed in the plastic bag after removal and sent home with the parents daily. The daycare rule requires that you have a variety of toys or equipment suitable for each age group of children you may have in care. The 6 general categories of items that you must have include the following: cognitive equipment, creative or dramatic play equipment, large muscle equipment, manipulatives, sand, grain, water play, and exploration equipment, and sensory stimulations. Some items may overlap categories. This slide and the following slide outline the basic items that you need to have per child in each age category. Toys and equipment must be new, used, or homemade as long as they are appropriate for the ages of children and activities for which they will be used, safe, and in good repair. Equipment or toys which are mouthed or may be chewed must be free of lead-based paint. Toys and equipment with chipped, cracked, or peeling paint must be tested to verify the absence of lead or be replaced. This is the first page of the DHS Licensing Monitoring Questionnaire in your packet. The questionnaire includes everything for which licensed providers are responsible. Please complete this by answering the questions as if you are already licensed. For example, the first question is, describe a typical day in childcare. You have not yet begun, but please include an outline of the day as you have it planned, including creative activities, outside play, reading, etc. Providers are required to complete a floor and escape plan for emergencies. Please complete the upper right-hand quadrant of this form and then draw your floor plan for all floors of your home. While the paper may say that 1 square equals 1 square foot, you do not have to draw your floor plan to scale. Just draw a recognizable rectangle with each room in the house identified and exits such as windows and doors clearly marked in red. Please draw a floor plan of all floors of the home, even those that you will not use for childcare. Childcare providers must have a plan for fires and tornadoes. Both a fire drill and a storm drill must be completed each month. After completing each drill, you need to record the date and time you conducted the drill. This form may be used to log your drills. Providers need to complete the childcare emergency plan in addition to the floor escape plan. This plan will need to be shared with parents and posted at your daycare entrance. The plan is a fillable document, so you can either type in your answers or print the document and complete it by hand. Either way, you will need to print at least one copy to post at your daycare entrance. The last form you will need to complete for childcare licensing is writing a policy. The rule and statute require these 17 items to be included in your policy. You are not required to print this document, but you will need to print your policy for the licensor to review and take. You will also need to provide a copy of your policy to each family in care and to provide an updated copy whenever you make policy changes. Please note that there will be a sample policy written in sequential order as stated in Rule 2 in your packet. Each provider will have his or her own style or method of writing their policy. However, all policy requirements that are listed in Rule 2 must be included. In regard to letter P on this slide, please note that smoking is not allowed at any time in a licensed childcare home in Redwood County per County Board Ordinance enacted 11/1/2012. Smoking is permitted in Lincoln, Lyon, Murray, Pipestone, and Rock County childcare homes outside of daycare hours. Your policy must note whether or not you allow smoking outside of daycare hours in your childcare setting. You should include one of the following statements or a similar statement. Smoking is not allowed in my daycare home at any time. It is also not allowed on my property. Or, smoking is not allowed in my daycare home during daycare hours. Smoking is allowed in my home outside of daycare hours. Please note that if smoking is allowed outside of daycare hours, parents must be notified. You are required to post a written notice in a conspicuous place and orally inform parents. Please be advised that providing a smoke-free environment is best practice in reducing the risk of sudden unexpected infant death for infants in care. Allowing smoking in your home outside of daycare hours affects your ability to provide a smoke-free environment. In addition to your child care policy, you are required to provide a chemical use policy that states you and anyone working or volunteering for you will not be under the influence of a medication or chemical that would affect that person's ability to provide care. The policy also needs to state that you will train employees and volunteers in this policy. You may include this as part of your provider policy as long as the chemical use policy is clearly labeled as such. The final policy procedural item that you need to provide is a written grievance policy outlining how you want parents to bring any concerns they have about your child care to you. Some areas you may want to address in your grievance policy include the following. Do you want parents to approach you on an informal basis? Is there a specific time you would prefer to discuss the grievance? For example, would you prefer this be addressed after child care hours? Would you prefer the parent or child's representative submit the grievance in writing? If so, will you provide a form? How will you respond to the grievance? Speak to the parent informally, in writing, Again, you may include this as part of your provider policy as long as the grievance procedure is clearly labeled. Thank you for watching the second orientation video. You may contact your licensor by telephone or email at any point in your licensing process. Please print and complete the form as confirmation that you have watched the Orientation 2 video.